I'd like to welcome you to our parent night, which is by video that you're going to be watching for the next hour. I know an hour seems kind of long, but this information is extremely important for the parent and for the new driver. You're going to be watching Officer Willard give his presentation on all the different forms of distracted driving that are involved with new drivers. And you're also going to be seeing some of the state statutes that pertain to new drivers at the start of the age of 15. What we would like to ask of you is to have parent participation with our program. This program is not done just alone by our instructors, but it is a partnership of parents, the drive instructors, the classroom instructor, and your student. You're going to see some contact information that Officer Willard is going to provide to you. You can also contact me if you have any questions. Please ask questions and please participate in this very important class with your student. Thank you, and we really appreciate you becoming a part of our program.
Hi, I'm Michelle. Welcome to Oregon City Driver Ed.
And I'm Dave, and I hope to look forward to driving with some of you soon.
I'm Marilyn, and I'm looking forward to another term.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. Welcome to Driver's Ed. Look forward to having your student.
Hi, I'm Paul. Likewise, I'll see you after school.
Just by a show of hands, who, parents-wise, who is experiencing Driver's Ed program for the first time? First teen drivers. Y'all are in for a treat. Having successfully put two of my own kids through Driver's Ed and teaching them how to drive, I can tell you it's probably one of the most scariest things you'll ever encounter as a parent. The number of times my life flashed before my eyes, I lost count. Understand, one tip I'll give you is understand that they are very afraid of the oncoming lane of travel, right? And so they will hug the shoulder. And when you're in the passenger seat, you pretty much feel like you're about to take out mailboxes or crash. So get used to that feeling. We're excited to be here. My name is Brian Willard. I'm a police officer with the Oregon City Police Department. Sergeant Justin Young is joining me as well. We are both assigned to our traffic division. Justin is our traffic division supervisor, and then we have 3 other positions in our division that are assigned solely to enforce traffic laws and investigate traffic crashes. And just to give you a little background history on the Oregon City Police Department Traffic Division and kind of how we got started and what our overall goal is that about 8 or 9 years ago, we started seeing a trend in Oregon City where our number of traffic crashes on an annual basis were comparable to cities like Hillsborough and Bend, which are 2 and 3 times our size respectively. We had a large number of traffic crashes that were happening in this city. And while we're only a city of about 37,000 people, on any given day, our average commuter population rises to about 168,000 people coming into or through the city. And so we saw this trend happening and knew that we needed to do something about that. We needed to address this issue. It was a public safety issue as far as our chief of police was concerned, Jim Bam. And so the formation of the traffic team started with really 3 goals in mind. One big goal in mind, done 3 different ways, and that was our goal is to reduce traffic crashes in this city. And I am pleased to tell you that when we started, we had about 900 crashes in any given year, and we just got 2019 statistics last month, and that's down to about 450 crashes in that year. So we have been very successful in reducing that number, and we're going to continue to do that. But the 3 ways that we do that, number 1 is enforcement, probably the least popular reason. way we do it, but enforcement, it is an important component to it. Nobody likes getting tickets. We understand that. But there is a psychological thing that happens to you when you get a ticket. You remember where that, I can tell you where my first ticket was when I was 17 years old. It was on River Road in Milwaukee. I'll never forget that day, right? The second component, and equally as important, was finding areas within the city where high traffic crashes were occurring and seeing if that was a engineering problem. And we've been successful in a couple different locations. The most notable one is out here on Beaver Creek Road at Maple Lane. When we started this, we saw we had one left turn T-bone crash at that intersection. The following year, when they switched everything to a active blinking yellow light for turning onto Maple Lane, we saw an increase of crashes at 1,400%. Okay? And so we worked with county roads and we worked with the city and going, hey, maybe during commuter times we need to adjust this a little bit. And we did, and we were able to bring that number down. Okay? And then the third component, and I think probably the most important component, is education. And that's where this class comes into play. I remember when we started this, we maybe had 20 people show up, and you can see we've got a lot more that come to it. And so our goal today, my goal is kind of twofold. One, I want to have a conversation with the parents, right? I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I've been where you're at, and maybe I can pass on a couple of little pointers that I learned, not only from a law enforcement perspective, but from a parent's perspective. But one of the things that I really want to cover, and this goes to not only the parents, but also the drivers, the teen drivers in here. I want to go over some statutes, some Oregon driving laws that not only affect teen drivers more than anybody, but the laws that we tend to see young drivers violate the most. And so it's not a shake your finger or shake our finger at you, it's make you aware of it and make you, let you know that those things are out there and what the law requires from a young driver, from a teen driver. Each year, there is about 48% of the young teens that are killed as a result of an accident, okay? And that can be anything, falling off a building to in a car crash. But of those 48% of teens that are killed on an annual basis as a result of an accident, 73% of them are a result of a traffic crash. Okay? Statistically speaking, year over year, and I looked at the data this week and it hasn't changed, motor vehicle traffic crashes are the leading cause of death for teens and young adults across this country. More than homicide and more than suicide combined. Okay? Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death. Now, I want to preface this by also saying this. I'm not here to scare you either, right? But the more you know. What is the reality? The reality of it is we're handing over a 2,000-pound chunk of metal to somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, and we go, off you go. And let's be honest, parents, you can probably agree to this. We all did some stupid stuff when we were kids, right? I see a lot of heads going up and down like, yep, that is true, right? And for you kids, there's going to come a time when you're old like me, and you're going to be, yep, I did a lot of stupid things when I was a kid. Okay? It's the circle of life. Motor vehicle crashes teenagers are 10 times more likely than adults to be involved in a fatal crash. Okay? And again, this goes back to that experience. And we're going to show you some videos that kind of demonstrate that a little bit. In the first 6 months of a teen having their driver's license, and I'm not talking about as we're going through this driver ed program, I'm talking about they're done with this, they've got their license, they're off, and they're driving on their own, right? The first 6 months are the most vital months of that driving experience. That is where, more likely than not, they're going to be involved in a crash. Interestingly enough, 31% of all fatal crashes involving teen drivers were as a result of speed. We're just going through some statistics here. When we look at travelers on the road, teen drivers represent about 6% of commuters at any given time on the roads. However, they do account for 8% of all fatal crashes. Okay? So there's an off balance there. 53% of all teens and fatal crashes happen to occur on the weekend. Makes sense, right? If it's the school year and the school week and weeknights, they're probably at home with the family doing homework, preparing for the next day. But on the weekend, it's, out with friends and hanging out. 31% of fatal teen crashes occur between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. And what you're going to start seeing in some of these numbers is some statutes and laws that kind of address these issues. We'll talk about that when we get there. 25% of teen crashes involve drinking. And we talk about the effects of distracted driving and how they compare to somebody who's under the influence of alcohol or a controlled substance or some kind of narcotic. And the numbers are exactly the same. 25% of fatal crashes involve distracted driving. Anybody in here remember Maddie West? I'm getting a couple people that are raising their hands. Yeah, I remember when Maddie West's incident happened and we talked about it, every hand in this room went up. For those of you who don't know who Maddie West was, she was a Oregon City High School senior. I always 2014? 2013? 14, I think it was 14. 2014, January of 2014. I'll make it a really, it's lost its impact a little bit, but she was driving into Oregon City from her house out in Redland, and her vehicle just simply crossed over the center line and went head on with a Hummer H3 at a combined impact speed of about 125 miles per hour. Okay. No indication that she was trying to swerve out of the way or anything like that. We tried to do a data dump of her phone, but her phone was so far damaged that there's nothing that we could gain from it. Everything pointed to the fact that for whatever reason, she was distracted in that car that day, and it ended up taking her life. And we as young adults and as teenagers, we don't really, mortality really never crosses our mind, right? We're young. And so we don't think about those things, or we think it can't happen to us. It doesn't happen to people I know. It happens in far off places to some poor fools. Then the moment it touches your school, I'm telling you, it's one of the worst feelings. I experienced it when I was in high school as well. Lost a dear friend to a fatal car crash. Okay, so I'll keep those in mind. Why is this? Why are we seeing all of these numbers? And I touched on it just a little bit. And the answer is inexperience. Right? Again, we're asking you to take on the responsibility, and it's a big responsibility, of driving on the road and being able to address situations that you're not used to, right? You haven't experienced that. And again, we're going to show some videos that are going to demonstrate this. They're kind of fun. Teens are more likely than older drivers to underestimate or not be able to recognize dangerous situations. Again, that goes back to that inexperience. You haven't experienced those things yet, right? And so you haven't figured out how you're going to do that. Teens are also more likely than adults to make critical decision errors that can lead to a serious crash. I think this is the video. It is. Normally you can hear the sound on this, and what you don't know is he's jamming out to some music right now, but he's doing nothing but looking at his phone. Let me back this up a little bit. Where this video comes from, I think it was State Farm, but what they did is, with the permission of the parents, but unbeknownst to the young drivers, they placed two cameras in the car, one that faced out to the roadway, what was going on, and one that faced directly at the driver. And they wanted to see how kids drove, I guess, in distracted driving. So in this case, in this one, we've got this young man. He's simply looking at his phone. You never see his eyes come up, but he's just going over into the oncoming lane, oncoming shoulder. And then when he starts to realize that he's going to crash, there he goes. This one, same thing, just kind of drifting off the road, except for she's approaching a car on the shoulder. This one is interesting to me, and you'll see why. So again, what's happening here? We'll talk about this one specifically when this video is done. He's flipping through music, not really paying attention. Looks like his eyes are up, but they're not. And you're going to see this same result time and time again. This kid's on his phone. Kudos to the parents, it's a flip phone. But it didn't matter. Doesn't see the cross traffic coming. This young lady never looks up. Not once. Until it's too late. She almost Tommy Boyed her hood there. Some of you will get that. This one, she occasionally looks up while she's texting. Every now and again. So I want to go back to that other one that I was talking about. Anybody notice what happened there? What did her car do? Kind of just, what's that?
Swerve.
Yeah, it kind of just started going, like slowly drifting onto the shoulder, right? What's the proper response to that? You're driving down the road, your vehicle starts drifting onto the shoulder. Adults, what do?
Slow down.
You just kind of turn the steering wheel back a little bit more, slow down, and get back in your lane, right? What does she do? Yanks the wheel, goes into the oncoming lane, tries to overcorrect again, and ends up fishtailing and losing control of her vehicle. That's what I'm talking about. Who's most at risk?
Male.
Yeah. Yeah. It's us. 2019 motor vehicle death rate for male drivers was over 2 times higher than the death rate of female drivers. The presence of teenage passengers happens to increase the crash risk of unsupervised teen drivers, and that increases the more passengers they have in the car. Newly licensed driver, I mean, we talked about this. The first 6 months of that driving experience are the most critical 6 months, and that's where most of the crashes occur. Now, I've given you a ton of bad news, but there is some fantastic news out there. Teenage motor vehicle crash death by sex, 1975 to 2019, males and females, we already went through that. Here it is, the impact of driver's ed on crashes. At age 16, drivers without, and this is Oregon statistics, okay, without driver's ed accounted for almost 3,500 crashes. Where students with driver's ed, 1,400. At age 17, that number goes up without driver's ed substantially, almost 6,000. Where we're going to start seeing the balance, like the gap between these numbers actually increase. 1,700 with driver's ed. 8,000 at age 18 without driver's ed, 1,200 or 1,300 at age 18 with driver's ed. Almost 9,000 at age 19, 661 with driver's ed. So we're starting to see this gap widen, right? And what this tells me, at age 20, 745, 7,500, 244 with driver's ed. What this tells me is the things that they learned in driver's ed carries on with them as they grow older. So that's the good news. You've got your kids in driver's ed. This is a fantastic program for them. All right, now on top of that, and I will say this too, it is a fantastic program, okay? But I want to encourage you parents, don't let this be the thing that they learn from. This has to be a component of this. Think of this as a partnership between you and the driver ed program and in teaching your kids to drive. You know, you're going to get eye rolls a lot from your kids. They know what they're talking about. Trust me, they've been around for 16 years. They know everything. Get used to that too. Okay? But understand that even though at that age they're trying to kind of gain their independence, you are still one of the most influential people in their lives. And so teaching them the right way and being a partner in that is super important. Okay? Let's talk about what the law requires. We're going to go over a couple of Oregon revised statutes and what the law requires specifically of teen drivers. And the first one we're going to talk about is distracted driving. We're going to talk about seatbelts. We're going to talk about some speed-related violations. And then we're going to talk about what the laws are surrounding their provisional driver's license. Okay? So let's first talk about distracted driving. In the statute by itself is actually called operating a motor vehicle while using a mobile electronic device. It's a mouthful of words, so we just say distracted driving. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, this is what the statute says. A person commits the offense of driving a motor vehicle while using a mobile electronic device if the person does any of the following. While driving a motor vehicle on a highway or on premises open to the public. Now there's a couple different distinctions here that are important. The first one is the word highway. What constitutes a highway? In Oregon, a highway is defined as any road in the state of Oregon that is open to the public for normal vehicular traffic. Okay? So a highway is defined as the street you live on all the way up to I-5. Okay? All of that is considered a highway by statutory definition. The next part of this is premises open to the public. And this was newly added in 2017 and when they revamped this law a little bit. They added premise open to the public. So what do I mean when I'm talking about premise open to the public? I mean areas that are private property technically, but they're open to the general public for use, like Fred Meyer parking lot or Safeway parking lot or Winco. I don't want to show any favorites. Their parking lot. That is a premise that is private, but it's open to the public. Okay? So this statute not only applies on highways, but it also applies in parking lots. Okay? That's something to be aware of. Drives on a highway or premises open to the public and holds a mobile electronic device in their hand, or so simply having it in your hand. You don't even have to be doing anything with it. And it's not uncommon when we see people driving by doing this. This is a violation if you are on a highway or if you're in a parking lot. Simply having it in your hand is a violation of the statute. So if they hold it in their hand or they use a mobile electronic device for any purpose, doesn't matter what you're using it for. If you're holding it in your hand and you're looking at a map, that's a violation. You don't have to be actively doing anything on the phone. If you're holding it in your hand and you're reading a text message, that's a violation. And there are some exceptions to this law, but none of them are going to apply to any scenario that we're talking about here tonight. Using a mobile electronic device, you are 6 times more likely to result in a crash. And here's the other thing that I want you guys to keep in mind. And I don't know if we cover this or not. If not, I'll cover it now. If we do, we'll skip over it. For you young drivers, drivers under the age of 18 cannot use their electronic device, period, for anything, not even hands-free talking, okay? So parents, keep that in mind. If your kid is out driving, don't call them or don't call them and expect them to answer, because if they do, they are in violation of the statute, okay? They can't use their phone at all for any reason. Kids, this also means you can't thumb through Spotify, I mean Spotify thing. Music. You can't flip through your music. There is an exception to this statute that says you can touch the device once to activate or deactivate a function of the device. And what the legislature is referring to there is it's in a mount and you've got a phone call, you go accept. Or you're done with the phone call and you go end. It doesn't mean next song. Only touched it once. Next song. Only touched it once. Next song. Right? That's not what it means. I've had them try. 6 times more likely to result in a traffic crash than drinking on a cell phone. I'm using a mobile electronic device. Okay. I really wish we could play that video for you. That's okay. We don't have audio. Yeah. Any questions on the cell phone law? By the way, as we're going through this, like, feel free to throw your hands up and ask questions. I want this to be super interactive, and I've already seen 3 go up. Go.
You said no GPS. What about GPS on your car?
So when I say you can't use your phone as a young driver, I am not referring to GPS. If your phone is mounted and you're using the GPS, that's fine. You can't touch it. You can't be entering the address while you're using the phone or while you're driving. But yeah, if you've got it mounted and you've put in your destination before you started your trip, and then you're just using that as a reference, totally fine. I saw another hand up here somewhere. Itching, I got it. I did see a hand up here. All right, same question. We'll go with you and then over here.
Listening to music, they have the music on their phone.
Yeah, again.
Have earbuds in or something. No earbuds? No.
If they're gonna, so there's nothing that says they can't listen to music from their phone. Again, they can't be manipulating the phone while they're driving. I would strongly discourage earbuds, just because while it's not against the law, you're tuning out a lot of audio going on around you that you might need to hear. What are we trying to accomplish? What we're trying to accomplish is the distraction of that device. And here's the reality. For us as parents, growing up, we didn't have these things, right? You got more computing power in the palm of your hand than I had on the computer that I played Oregon Trail on. And so we didn't have these distractions when we grew up. We weren't locked into social media. There was no such thing. I mean, we had pagers, we had beepers. We called them beepers if you were cool. We had beepers. I know you probably won't. So if you don't know what a beeper was, it was this little device that if somebody wanted to talk to you, your beeper had a special number, and they would pick up the phone and they would call the number, and then at the tone, they would enter the phone number that they wanted you to call them back on. And so when you're walking through the mall with your friends, right, you never had it on vibrate. You always had to have it loud and on your pocket, not on your belt, because it was cool in the pocket, flipped inside out. Because you wanted everybody to know you had a beeper, right? Like, you beep and it goes off, and you're like, yeah, somebody's paging me. You didn't want to tell your buddies it was like your friend or your mom, right? I got to go find a payphone. I got to make a phone call. Somebody's paging me. For those of you who don't know what a payphone was, we had a question up here, and then we'll get to you, okay? What's that? Awesome.
What about if you're like, parking?
Okay, yeah, good question, because we talked about that, right? Premise open to the public. So if you are in, I thank you for asking that, because there's some components that I want to talk about. If you are in a parking lot and you are in a parking space, that's fine, right? You're good. If you're driving through the parking lot or in a lane where cars would drive, even if you're stopped, not good. Which brings me to the other point that I wanted to bring up, and that was, so one of the reasons or the excuses that we get all the time is, well, I wasn't operating my vehicle, I'm stopped at a light, right? I'm not operating. There's actually case law that covers this, but the response you would get from the judge was, well, was your foot on the brake? Was the ignition turned on? If that's true, then you were operating the vehicle. So by statute, now if you are in a lane of travel, at a stoplight, stopped for whatever reason, you still cannot use your phone, okay? If you're going to use it, you need to pull off to the shoulder, off the lanes of travel, and then do whatever you need to do there, okay? Thank you for asking that. Yeah, so as adults, right, you can use your phone hands-free. You can talk on your phone hands-free, utilize other hands-free functions of your phone. As a person who's under the age of 18, you cannot. So that most people don't look at their lap while they're driving, right? It's clear what's going on, and then I see the phone in their hand. So I pull her over and I go, hey. So I ask her, what's she doing on her phone? She's like, I'm looking at Facebook. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a thing anymore, right? Facebook's not cool. No?
For us old folks, it is.
Yeah, for us old timers, for the fogies, it is. But not, what's, like Instagram? Snapchat, is that still a thing? Snap. TikTok. What are you doing? Making TikTok videos. What? Okay. No, look, she's looking, I'm looking at Facebook. And I'm like, I have so many questions. A, what is so important on Facebook? And we can attribute this to any social media. What is so important on social media that you have to look at that while you're driving? This is the question that I proposed to her. And her response to me was very telling. She says, very calmly, I don't know what to tell you, officer. That's just my generation. Wow. Thank you for the honesty. I mean, I appreciate that. Here's your ticket. But it was, she's right. It is this generation. They grew up in this, right? These can become addictive. There are all kinds of studies about the addictiveness of social media. I stopped another young lady driving by on her phone, and I asked her again, what were you doing on your phone? Yeah, I was Snapchatting my lunch. Huh? What is this? What is, somebody explain this to me. What is Snapchatting my lunch?
Taking
Go.
a picture of your lunch. This is my lunch today.
When you say it out loud, it seems weird, right? Like I'm taking a picture of the food I just consumed so that everybody can see the food I consumed. The food I'm about to consume. Yeah, either way. All right. Whatever blows your hair back. All right, I digress. Let's talk about seatbelts. Surprisingly, this is one of those statutes that a lot of young drivers don't follow. I can't tell you how many young drivers I stopped that are not wearing their seatbelt. And it's weird to me because I remember a time when it wasn't a law in Oregon that you had to wear a seatbelt, right? But for you young drivers, this has been the law since you've been born, your entire life. Let's talk about that. Fair to properly use a seatbelt. Happens when a driver or a passenger operates a motor vehicle on a highway in the state and is not properly secured with a safety belt, safety harness as required when the person is the driver or passenger of a vehicle who is 16 years of age or older and is not properly secured with a safety belt, or the person is the driver of a vehicle with a passenger who is under 16 years of age and that passenger is not properly secured with a safety belt. In a nutshell, what this is saying to you is that if you're 16 years of age or older and you're not wearing a seatbelt, you get the ticket. If you're 16 years of age or older and you've got a passenger under the age of 16 and they're not wearing their seatbelt, who gets the ticket?
Driver.
The driver. Driver gets the ticket. And this has happened, right? New driver, 16-year-old, taking their friends who's 15 to lunch. Nobody's wearing their seatbelt. I cannot, by law, issue that 15-year-old a ticket. That ticket goes to the driver. Okay? What I really want to get across is why wearing seatbelts are so important. And it has to do with physics. Newton's third law of physics. Object at rest remains at rest. An object in motion remains in motion at the same speed and in the same direction until acted on by an outside force. Paraphrasing. When you put that seatbelt on, what it essentially does is it makes you part of that vehicle. It connects you to that vehicle. And I'm going to show you some videos of what happens when you're not connected to the vehicle. This guy in this white car is very lucky. He gets ejected right here, and then almost gets run over. Here's a bus driver not wearing a seatbelt, right out the window. This is a rollover crash, and that little ragdoll thing flying through the air is a person. That is a fatal crash. We're going to back it up a little bit and slow it down. That person does not survive that crash. Did not survive that crash. Okay? And when you think about it, other than this centrifugal force ejections, that bus driver, it's not the bus driver being thrown, it's the vehicle moving out from underneath the bus driver. That's what's happening. That bus driver is continuing in the same direction at the same speed, but is never acted on by an outside force, which would be that seatbelt. Okay? So essentially think of it as the vehicle coming out from underneath that driver. 60% of teen fatalities in traffic crashes were not wearing their seatbelt. Again, this is just a weird trend to me. It's a weird thing, because you grew up with it. Wearing your seatbelt can reduce the risk of fatal injuries by 45%. Wearing a seatbelt can reduce the risk of moderate injury by 52%. Using a seatbelt keeps you secure in the vehicle. Total ejection is almost always going to result in a fatality. When a person is totally ejected from the vehicle, almost always will it result in a fatality. So far, stay off your phone, because that's dangerous. And buckle up. Like, that's the simplest thing that you can do to protect yourself. Airbags are not enough. We get that sometimes. Well, I got an airbag. That will save me. Airbags by themselves will not help. And in fact, airbag is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not a bag that's being filled with air. It's a bag that's exploding, containing an explosion in your face. And because it has to come out that fast. You can actually get seriously injured or killed from an airbag deployment if you're not buckled, if you're not wearing a seatbelt. Any questions on seatbelts? Yes?
I've seen this before. I've seen it. Okay, so 2 16-year-olds, or we're leaving school, and we're just going down the road. I don't need to put my seatbelt on. I'm the driver, but this person who I'm not going to say that you need to put your seatbelt on because they're 16 or they're 18. They should be in charge of their body. Am I going to get in trouble because that 16-year-old didn't put their seatbelt on?
You're not going to get in trouble in terms of the law,
okay,
right? But here's the reality. Sometimes it takes a little bit of standing your ground and being brave, and people will actually respect you for it that much more. We're not moving this car until you put your seatbelt on. If you're not going to put your seatbelt on, you're free to walk. But I'm not going to put you at risk. You're my responsibility. And I know that can be a hard thing to do as a teenager, right? Because you want to be cool with your friends. But let me tell you what's not cool. Going to a friend's funeral because of something stupid. And it doesn't even have to be a crash that you caused, right? You get T-boned. They get ejected. And now what? Right? So I know that can be a challenging thing, but sometimes you just got to stand your ground and go, no, we're not moving. I'll tell you this, be good examples. I stopped a guy one time on his cell phone with his young daughter in the car, and I didn't write him a ticket, but I yelled at him a lot. I mean, I say yelled, it's talking sternly, sort of. But I mean, like, what kind of, and this is the question I had for him, what kind of example are you setting for your 15-year-old daughter who's while you're driving around on your cell phone? You're showing her that that's fine, that's okay, right? So be a good example. Let's talk about speeding. So there's a couple speeding violations in Oregon. The first one is ORS 811-111, which is violation of the posted speed limit. And all that really means is you're driving at a speed greater than the black and white sign says you're allowed to. Okay? 56 miles per hour in a 55 mile an hour zone is a violation of that speed limit. Okay? Are you going to get stopped? Only by a few officers, not by me. The other speed component is violation of the basic speed rule, 811-100. And what this statute says is you're driving at a speed that is greater than what is reasonable and prudent given the conditions of the roadway, given the traffic at the time, the totality of all these circumstances. And this statute exists for those situations where, you know, what's the speed limit on 213? It's 55 miles per hour going down the hill, right? Well, if we have the ice winter that we just came through, are you going to drive 55 miles an hour down 213 on a sheet of ice? And you can. There are consequences. No, you wouldn't necessarily be in violation of the posted speed limit, but you are in violation of the basic speed rule. Okay? You're driving at a speed that's greater than is reasonable and prudent, given that condition. Okay? Here's the other one, speed racing on a highway, 811-125. And what that statute says, if on a highway, so when we write this citation, oftentimes people seem to be a little bit confused given the title, speed racing. Okay? There are components of this violation that don't necessarily dictate racing. So on a highway, a person drives a vehicle or participates in any manner in any of the following: a speed competition or contest, an acceleration contest, a test of the vehicle's physical endurance, a making of a speed record. Please don't try to make speed records on 205. Okay? Please, I'm just saying. This is the one that gets them. An exhibition of speed or acceleration. If you're stopped at a light and you punch it, you don't have to be racing anybody, but that's an exhibition of acceleration. And that is a violation of the statute. If you're spinning your tires, that's an exhibition of acceleration. That's a violation of the statute. Okay? So just be aware of that. Any questions on speed? Yes?
When and how far does the speed limit change? Does the law become effect? So if I'm going down Monopolis, coming into Milwaukee, and it goes from 40 to 25, at what point do I have to slow? And then as I leave, at what point can I accelerate from 25 back to 45?
Good question. So you have to be going 25 miles per hour when you hit that sign.
So even if I can see the sign, I still have to go 25 until I hit the sign itself.
So if you're coming from 45 down to 25, you see the 25 mile an hour sign up there. You don't have to be going 25 the moment you see the sign, but by the time you get to that sign, you have to be doing 25. Likewise, as the speed increases, if it's 25 and you see the 45 mile an hour sign, you cannot speed up to 45 miles per hour until you're past that sign or beyond that sign. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Let's talk about provisional driver's license. And when we went back and looked, or when we first talked about all of those statistics, you know, the first 6 months and the hours of driving, a lot of this gets incorporated into our provisional driver's license law. So what the provisional driver's license does is it's the thing that they will be cited for is no valid operator's license. But what the actual title is these restrictions on operation with the provisional driver's license. And this is what it says. For the first 6 months, a driver cannot have any passengers in their vehicle under the age of 20 who is not a member of their immediate family. Okay? So we talk about the critical moment is those first 6 months of having a driver's license and why they don't need distractions. The law in Oregon basically says you can't have anybody under the age of 20 who's not an immediate member of your family in the car. So no driving your friends around for the first 6 months. And here's the deal. We take this very seriously because we are the ones that get to respond to those horrific crashes and knock on the doors of parents. I don't want to do that. So if I see you driving around and you've committed a violation and I come and I learn that you're 2 months into your provisional driver's license and you've got 3 passengers in the car, you're going to get a no valid operator's license. And here's the other thing that's going to happen. Our judge is going to suspend your license until you're 18. Seriously. Our judge takes that as you don't have the maturity to make the appropriate decision on driving just yet. And so we're going to take your license from you until you turn 18. Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask, you know, who's your passenger? And you go, it's my brother. What's your name? John. What's your last name? Smith. Well, it's not the same as her last name. What's going on? You know, we have ways. Yeah. So, yes, we will call parents, right? I'll tell you one of the ways that I like to kind of handle this, and I've done this a few times, is I'll give out the ticket, no valid operator's license, with the understanding that, hey, bud, your license is about to be suspended. And I go, here's the deal. You have your parent, mom or dad, call me before my shift is over. I get off at 5 o'clock. Have them call me before my shift is over, and if they do that, and I can have that conversation, I will dismiss the ticket. We'll make that go away. I would much rather, who are they going to be more afraid of, me or their parents? Their parents, right? But on top of that, I'd much rather put the ball in your court, right? And let you make the parenting decision on what's going to happen. And the response that I get is, don't worry, officer, this won't happen again. All right? Yes.
Do you say that it's the judge that takes the driver's license away from the, that apply statewide or certain areas?
It can. I know our municipal judge in the way she functions, and she will suspend. She'll put a suspension order on the license until they're 18.
Is that a city judge or a county judge?
Ours is a municipal judge. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you're aware, 10 or 15 years ago, they had a really bad accident in Estacada where 5 teenagers were killed. The young teenager just got his license. He had 4 of his friends in the car and driving a little bit for another.
Yep.
Crash.
Yep, I do remember
All 5
that.
of them were killed.
Milwaukee kids. Yep, I do remember that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad that judge takes licenses.
Yep, absolutely. All right. For the second 6 months of your, oh, sorry. No. No. So if you're driving your siblings around, that's fine. If that's happening, you guys need to have those conversations about, hey, what is the proper way to be a passenger in the car while your brother or sister is driving, right? It's not jumping around to being a distraction. For the second 6 months, they can have no more than 3 passengers in the car under the age of 20 that's not an immediate member of their family. So at this point, we can start having friends in the car, okay? For the first year, you cannot operate a motor vehicle between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m., with a few exceptions. If they're driving between home and a place of work, so if they're getting off at, midnight and driving home, that's fine. Now, that doesn't mean I'm driving home, but I'm making a pit stop at my buddy's house. That's not what that means, okay? It's from your place of work to home. Okay? If they're driving between home and a school event for which there is no other transportation available, so this is the key component there. It can't be just that, that they're driving between the school event. There has to be no other transportation available. So parents, it can't be, yeah, I didn't really feel like taking them or picking them up, so I'm going to have them drive. That doesn't work, okay? You're out of town and there's no way for them to get any other transportation. If you're driving for employment purposes within the first year, that's fine, between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m., or if they're accompanied by a licensed driver who's at least 25 years of age or older, okay? Then they can. Another video we can't play. So let's talk about some pro tips for parents. Not only, this doesn't only come from my time as a police officer and the training that I've received as a police officer, but also these are things that I did with my own kids. So the first one is shuffle steering. This is a fantastic way to ensure, and I think you guys teach it, yeah? Yeah. They'll learn how to do this in driver's ed too. This is a fantastic way to always maintain control of the vehicle. They teach this to us in our police academy when we're learning how to drive police vehicles at high speeds and maintaining control of our vehicle. And so the basic concept is that you draw a line down the center of that steering wheel. And the left hand never crosses over that center line and the right hand never crosses over that center line. And so as I'm making a turn, I'm controlling the wheel this direction, turning right, grabbing it with my right hand and continuing that turn. Okay? And back and forth. It's just this shuffle kind of steering. you'll see that it's a little awkward in the beginning, but you'll see that you're always in control of that wheel and that vehicle when you're driving. Okay, so there's a good one. Eyes up exercise. This is a good one too. Then we do this in the academy as well. So in the academy, we, like 5 of us will go get into a car with an instructor, and we'll go drive the streets of Salem. And the driver, what they have to do while the rest of us are just sitting there, is they have to verbalize everything that they see. Driving down the road, I see a guy on the sidewalk over there. He just pushed the walk signal. He's getting prepared to walk across the street. There's a motorcycle in front of me. This person next to me is picking her nose. Whatever it is that they see, they're verbalizing. And again, in the beginning, this feels a little awkward, right? Especially for the teen drivers. I think I'm just talking for talking purposes. But what it's teaching them to do is it's teaching them to keep their eyes up and constantly scanning, right? To the point where, it's going to become routine for them. When we first started, my daughter is the oldest, and when I first started doing this with my daughter, was a very shy young lady. And so even with us in the car, she was very shy about it. But after a while, we would just get in the car and she'd just start talking, right? No prompting from me. And one of the things that she told me, and I've learned this myself too, is when you burn that into your brain, when that becomes your comfort in driving, anything else is uncomfortable. Looking down at something else becomes uncomfortable, right? And then it becomes a subconscious thing that I don't like the way I feel when I'm looking down. So it's another good way to ensure that they're going to not be on their phone as much. Okay? That eyes up exercise. All right, this next one, teens are going to hate me for. There are a ton of cool apps out there. We'll go over just a couple of them. Bark allows you to monitor their social media. You can manage access to their phone and apps on their phone. You can get alerts on the phone. I'm already seeing phones being taken and panic ensuing. This is great for making sure that they're not on their phone while they're driving. There's some other apps out there that can do some other cool things. Bouncy is one. Gives you location updates where they're at. Wait, you said you're supposed to be at the dance. Why are you in Beaver Creek? Gives you crash notification if they're involved in a crash. It gives you some driving insights. How fast they're going. How are they braking? Where are they turning? Okay? You thought technology was just for you, Life 360 is another one. Individual driver reports. Again, crash notification, real-time driving insights. I wish I could remember the name of the app that we put on my daughter's phone. She hated me so much that I did this, because what it did is every time her vehicle's accelerometer went more than 5 miles an hour, it bricked her phone. There's nothing she could do. She could not get into it. It was just a black screen. Actually, it was a black screen with a button, and pushing that button allowed her to call me. And that was it. Oh, she was so mad at me. We got into scream. Oh, she hated me. But you know what? I was cool with it. I'd rather her hate me for a little time, or be really mad at me for a little time, and still have her here. That's what's more important. She's one of my best friends now. She's 26 years old, and really watching her come into her own is a lot of fun.
Still on there, isn't it?
No, she's got her own phone now, and I lost that privilege at 18. She's like, take it off. Fair enough. No problem. Yeah. Maybe there was a call dad or call police. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, I did a lot of other things too. It gave me crash notifications, driving insights. I mean, for my son, it was like, yeah, I know it's coming. Whatever. It's all good. So. Any questions? Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you guys being here. Yes.
Driving through a yellow light illegal?
Fantastic question. If you didn't hear it, is driving through a yellow light illegal? Who says it's legal? Who says it's illegal? Who says it's illegal only if you get caught? So what the statute says in response to a traffic control device is the proper response to a red light is your time, and I'm going to paraphrase it, your time in that intersection is over. You no longer have rights to the intersection at a red light. The language for a yellow light is exactly the same for a red light. When that light turns yellow, you no longer have legal right to that intersection. And so kind of the rule that we go by is if you clear that intersection and the light is still yellow, that's fine. You probably responded appropriately. But if at any point while you're in the middle of that intersection, that light turns red, you did not respond to that appropriately. And the timing of those lights have a lot of things that happen. They take into account the speed of the road. They take into account the traffic volume of that road. Okay? Most lights cycle between yellow light and red light at about 4.5 seconds, which if you're traveling the appropriate speed is plenty of time to either clear the intersection appropriately or stop appropriately. I think where a lot of people get confused, or that confusion comes from, is what do you do in a blinking yellow light? You proceed with caution, right? And I think that there's a crossover there where they just go, that's what you do at a yellow light. At a solid yellow light, it's no different than a red light. At a blinking yellow light, proceed with caution. Yes?
For example, if you're driving over to California and they go yellow, something happens, can they actually pull over the ticket?
Sure. Yeah.
And how many tickets does it or can it hold? That's in my mind. Or, so for example, I'll drive with my daughter, we were like, oh gosh, she turned yellow right at that moment and she had to stop her brake space and we were talking right there at the intersection. I was like, okay. But I was just curious because I didn't have to know anything.
Yeah, here's the reality. Most officers are going to walk up and go, you're learning, aren't you? You're learning how to drive. Yeah. We'll use that opportunity as an educational moment. I firmly believe that tickets can be effective, but so can education on a traffic stop. And just explaining what the law says. You're going to walk away from that going, I learned something, and you didn't get a ticket. So, win-win. So, yeah, 99.9, there's always the outliers, but 99.9 of those police officers are going to go, hey, here's what you have to do. Be aware of this. Learn. You're doing a good job. Keep going. Any other questions that I can answer for you? Yes. No. So sometimes, do you guys still have plumber? Yeah. So one of our school resource officers does come to the class and kind of does the same thing, kind of a question and answer round robin thing. So yeah, that'll happen. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, Suze, do you have anything else? No. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time.